Hello, Internet. Right. Mystery solved with the capacitors. So, someone left a comment and said, I'm paraphrasing here because I'm too lazy to look it up, but basically on the lines of, like, are you sure the voltage on these is okay? Because it's probably the voltage which was the issue. And I was thinking, well, of course the voltage was okay, because I mean, this Hornby adapter runs at, as you can see, just at the bottom there, 15 volts. That's what it puts out, 1 amp. And these are rated for 16 volts, so 15 is less than 16. Surely that's okay. Did a bit of googling, did a bit of searching, and found actually these things exploding is not that uncommon if you run them on the ragged edge like I've been doing. So when it was running on the old layout, it was at 10 volts, which was well within 16 volts, hence I had no problems. But once I plugged it into the Hornby Select controller, that ran at 15 volts. That was very close to, well, 15 and a half, I think. That was pretty much on the limit. And the act of soldering these in can also just reduce their ability to not explode, basically. So, yeah, so I think all my instructions previously were fine, but just don't get 16 volt ones unless you can guarantee that the track you're always going to run on is always going to be comfortably below 16 volts. And by comfortably, I mean like 12 volts maximum, I think would be the most you'd ever want to push through. So if you've got anything, I mean, I think DCC can go right up to, I think it's like 22 volts or something like that. So I think that's not common, but I think DCC can really go quite high. And that's basically why it exploded. So the combination of probably my dodgy soldering and putting too much heat into them when I first soldered them, plus they're only rated for 16 volts and this was running at 15 and a bit volts. And let's be honest, guys. When these things are rattling along here, they're not going to sit at a perfect 16 point or 15.0 volts the whole time. They are going to go up and down as the motor just generally puts load on them. So it's going to be tricky. So I'm in the process now of trying to source some other capacitors. So basically with the tantalum ones, which is what these are pretty much as good as it gets in terms of, well, before we get into silly money, these are as good as it gets in terms of bang for your buck, in terms of the size and how much capacitance, how much energy they can store. I've still got the original one here. So for example, this is what came with the packet. It is simply, without taking the Dremel to it, which I'm not willing to do, this won't fit. So this is a capacity of 1,000. And this is 470, and so another 470 there gets you as close as makes no difference to the 1,000 that you need. The little bit that you're losing there isn't a problem, and 1,000 is the maximum that Zemo say can work with their decoder. So actually, look, you can see the size difference. Hence, you go with the tantalum ones. But the downside with the tantalum ones is they do go bang, as I've discovered. This one wouldn't have coped a lot better. So it's 16 volts again. You get away with it more on these ones. They're a bit more tolerant of it, but they will their life will drop. It won't be very good. They'll die. But the way that these things die is a bit more of a kind of a less dramatic thing. The way these die is they just kind of stop working, and then they will start barfing their internals out, and then they start leaking acid everywhere and destroying everything it comes into contact with. So that's probably not much better anyway. So even though Zymo themselves, actually, I double-checked the instructions today, actually, just to refresh my memory. They say on the instructions 16 volts is plenty, don't go over that, you don't need to. Turns out they were wrong. And obviously 16 volts is fine if you're running at 12 or 13 volts here. 16 volts is probably okay, but I'm not. I'm running at 15, and 15 is not that uncommon, so yeah, not ideal. So anyway, I'm on the hunt now for 35 volts. So I'm going hardcore. 35 volts on these things. Now these have got a capacity of they're 16 volts and they're 470. Now you can get 35 volt ones that are the same physical side, but they will not store 470. They'll store 100. Which is obviously dramatically less. Now, I think anything is better than nothing when it comes to stay alive in this thing. So what I've done is I've of the pack that I brought over here, I've just taken some more out just to kind of play around, because I found some on eBay and I found some on AliExpress as well, which are the same physical size. but they run at they will happily run at 35 volts. Running them at a lower voltage is not a problem. Running them at a closer capacity is the issue. So the controller can take, the decoder I should say, can take 1,000 in terms of the capacitance. So I've just tried to kind of stack them. I think it's a pack of 5 I can buy for about £5. So I've just been playing around with stacking them in various ways. I've just got to be very careful about how I solder these things. And that will a little sort of bale or whatever, a little sort of pyramid, a little stack, not pyramid, what's the wrong word? A little stack of these, 4 of them will just about fit in here. I might even get away with 6 with the height. It kind of depends on the orientation and how good I am with my soldering. Spoiler alert, I'm not very good with my soldering. I'm beginning to wonder if I should bother, but I know I want the Stay Alive because it was a pain without it. And the Stay Alive is nice, despite the singed wire. I was tempted just to try again. I thought, well, 16 is lower than 15, but I mean, I found non-railway links as well, non-model railway links like on Stack Overflow and things. And the advice is that the tantalum capacitors, great as they are, they should be run at well below their voltage, like well within their limits. And you know that was even emphasised in italics on the answer that I saw on there. So. Yeah, so the other options is obviously I just try again, or I run it without the Stay Alive, or I perhaps get a lower input voltage. That's tempting as well. Let's be honest, this Hornby, this Hornby Select controller, well, that's the power brick for it. It's kind of low end. I know that. I'm very aware of that. However, Hornby have said, I've seen them publicly say it on YouTube, that they put a lot of effort into making sure that this thing, when a short occurs, this thing will back off. The other thing I've been using, this is why I've been so careful and gentle with it until recently when I've got the train set down there. This runs at 12 volts, which then sounds great because it loses a couple of volts by the time it hits the controller and stuff, although it doesn't tend to lose volts here with the Hornby Select. I could possibly run it at 12 volts. I'm tempted to try, but this thing is a laptop power supply. Well, I say laptop, it actually powered a desktop PC, which I built in 2006, I think. So the trouble with that is that those supplies, they really will just push out 12 volts regardless of any kind of short circuit you have. And when these things are going over these points and stuff, sometimes, let's be honest guys, they do just short out and bugger up sometimes. And I want this thing to say, hold on, I'm not happy, and to switch itself off. I don't want this thing to just power through and go, oh, hey, you've got a short circuit. Okay, here we have another 5 amps going through, or whatever it does. That thing does not cut out, not really, until it's kind of too late. So, yeah, do I bother? Do I just get a smaller one of these? It would be cheaper. Because a smaller one of these, I mean, because by the time I've then stacked up 4 of these to get me 400, could I just get a 400 of this, maybe at 25 volts instead of 35 volts? I noticed the difference here between 35 and 25 on the tantalums, it made no difference to the package size, so I may as well get the 35. But 25 is probably okay. Do I get 25 volts on this and just say 400 or 300 on the capacitance, and then just kind of plonk that in there and just call it a day? That would be a lot easier to solder, wouldn't it? That would be a lot easier to solder, because rather than me, I'm not good at soldering, guys, that's very obvious. Rather than me doing this and soldering, then putting the wires to it and then just hoping I haven't, hoping everything's straight for one thing, because the space is going to be tight. Yeah, I'm getting analysis paralysis now, guys. I've learned a bit too much, and now I'm kind of umming and ahhing about actually should I go with this older style thing, which is cheaper and easier to get hold of, less energy dense, admittedly, but I mean it doesn't really matter, because I think I'm going to be going right down to now like 200 or 300 on this, rather than the 1,000 this thing gives us. It's a shame, isn't it? The TT scale is wonderful, but Hornby have not, in my view, they've not done a great job with designing this loco. Personally, I don't. In terms of the looks of it, there's no problem there. I think it looks great, but just the plastic here is just too thick. It just didn't need to be like that. And I'm too afraid. I'll be really honest. I'm just too afraid to take a Dremel to it. So there it is. Right, as usual, one of my supposedly quick videos, which I thought would only take 2 minutes. We're now hitting the 10-minute mark. and I'm rambling. So I'm still deciding if I'm going to buy 4 of these little buggers for 35 volts, or maybe one of these that runs at maybe 25 volts. So again, it's well within its limit, but has less than 1,000 on the capacitance, because basically that 1,000 is how long it can support everything going through here. I will keep you updated. But yes, basically that's the problem with my original thing. So I need to see if YouTube has a feature to kind of put some kind of message on top of it saying, you know, oh, do I on-list the video for now? I might need to on-list the video for now and then figure it out and then do it again. I'll try and have a look. I don't want other people to experience what I've experienced. Not pleasant, definitely not very pleasant. But if you're running at less than, I think if you're running at 12 volts, you're probably okay. If you're running at more than that, and I want the ability for this thing to just work with any controller, even though it's very unlikely to ever go to any track which is not mine, I still want the ability to run it on a regular controller. So I do want 20 something volts. So yeah, I might have to get the non-tantalum. I might have to get these bad boys instead, and just, I think anything is better than nothing. I think even if it's only 100, it's still better than nothing at all, but not much better. So I probably, yeah, I'll maybe sleep on it, have a think about it. Ideally, I want this sorted by the weekend, but hey, my service kit isn't turning up either, so I can't really run it. And yeah, I've got other bits and pieces that I could be getting on with in the meantime. Okay, yeah, that's my supposedly quick update. Yeah, it was the volts all the time. Despite what Zemo said on their instructions, despite them saying themselves, 16 volts is enough. Don't go overboard. Maybe they meant 16 volts is enough with one of these, and it's not enough with one of those. They didn't specify, so maybe that's a misinterpretation from my part. Oh well, that's how it goes. Have a great evening, everyone, and maybe I'll make another video in a few days. Bye bye.